Hi, everyone. I'm Angela Clark, and this is my husband, Dan Clark, and we're with Ex Worldwide Truth Seekers. That is my website. No, my website's actually Angela's Inspirations, .com. So anyway, we're interviewing today, again, for the second time. This is episode 2 with Sara Ahrenholtz. And
Yes.
so she is a former Worldwide Church of God attender. Sara began attending the Worldwide Church of God with her mother beginning at age 5. She actually grew up on a farm in Iowa, and then actually, I can't believe it, but her mother drove them every week to the Sabbath in Nebraska, which is about an hour to an hour and a half away, where she began attending Worldwide Church of God with her mother, and again at age 5. Her father never attended the church. Sara had 2 older siblings who also attended. They also actually got to keep Christmas and whatnot before they got stuck into this whole thing. The pastor at that time was Mr. Swaggerty. Sara is the mother of a beautiful daughter, Isabella, now an adult, currently lives in Oregon. Today, Sara is going to focus on medical neglect, which we actually attempted to do last time, but we didn't get that far. And so it's a medical neglect due to improper care. And Sara will be sharing just what she experienced and or witnessed, and I will too, in the Worldwide Church of God. Again, I believe that the first step, guys, towards our healing is awareness. So awareness is key. So again, let's get going on this. Okay, welcome, Sara, once again. Thank you for being on with
Thank,
us.
thank you. Thank you so much. And I completely agree with you, Angela. I think realizing that we were abused and controlled in many ways, that's really necessary before we can even begin to forgive like our parents and others, like what was done to us. Um, One thing I've really learned was I always thought forgiveness meant you were that meant you were condoning the behavior and stuff that happened to you. It's really not about that.
No.
It's you're forgiving them so that way you can heal and let go. And I really just want to say that before. And I know this has brought up a lot of emotions, and by the comments I feel like it's brought up a lot of old wounds and stuff for everybody, and I've really felt that these last couple days.
Yeah.
And I appreciate everybody commenting and sharing their stories. I've really felt everybody's pain, and especially this one, this doctrine or belief that the Worldwide Church of God had. This one was so damaging. I hope I can even like express and like how bad it was. Once again, I got occasionally taken to the doctor. I was one of the lucky ones. I feel like it kind of depended on your parents and your certain situation, how strict this was followed.
I,
Some were not taken at all, and there were deaths.
yeah.
And there were suicides because you weren't allowed, mental help as well. So I'll also say if you needed a surgery for something, a lot of people would not accept that medical care and help. Um, there is 2 websites that I found that are keeping track of like the suicide statistics and the deaths in the Worldwide Church of God. I was glad to see that. And it's I believe under hwarmstrong.com, and then the other one is the painfultruth.com. I believe that those are uh, the 2. But you literally there's hundreds of deaths and suicides. So this is very real.
Well,
Like, and it
was
what
it
go ahead.
was that HW dot Armstrong?
No,
Uh,
no, just
HW.
hwarmstrong.com,
And
and then the painfultruth.com.
and what
And
about,
those were some good websites that
yeah.
had a lot of information on that I
Oh,
recently
yeah.
found.
I've been through the painful truth, and I printed out a lot of stuff off there. I never heard
Yeah,
of HW Armstrong, but those guys have a lot of great details about what went on. Really help us to put together, especially if you've been out for a while, put back together what you've forgotten. Because I don't know, I've been out already 40. I figured out yesterday, 42 years already, and you do.
wow.
And even though my mom is still in there, she's probably what keeps me painfully attached because of her. guilt and shame and constant battering me for, trying to make sure I don't forget, right? And so I'm reminded of
Yeah.
every holy day, not so much anymore. She's tried to lay off of it, but she does it sneaky little ways. And anyway, it just kind of keeps me stuck a little bit in there. And I don't know. I just have forgotten some things, but you
Oh,
have
I
been
know, and
reminding
I'm sure
me.
we still do feel stuck. We push it down, but then
I
we also
do.
try to keep up like that wall, right, from those family
Yes.
members. So there's a lot of weird stuff that we kind
Yeah.
of do to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, it's like the abuse that happened, it was so severe and so bad that literally, most people would be like, you should, how are you talking to them, even having a relationship?
I know.
Um, but it's literally like I wouldn't have family then.
Right. Now, Sarah,
So, and I think a lot of people can feel that way.
now tell me about your parents. Did I understand that neither one of them are alive now?
No, they're both alive. They did end up getting divorced, but we'll get to that in the third episode, I guess, because that kind of goes with my
Course. Yeah.
exit.
We'll talk about that.
Um, and also, so my dad was not in it, but I
Okay.
will say he was very old school. So you would almost think he was.
Oh,
You got, spanked. I wasn't allowed to cry. I
oh,
remember being told to be a man, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm a
my
girl,
girl.
and getting whooped for crying. So these last couple of years in therapy, I've told her I've cried more in these last 2 years than I have my whole life. So because I really have numbed and pushed that down
Oh, yeah.
and really tried not to. And I would really almost feel like I was getting in trouble and whooped every time I cried. I'm sure other people feel similar, and they have that that happened to them as well. So you know, we have to go back to, a lot of people either grew up in this or they're brought into that. This is not our choice. Or, we're babies, we're children, we're minors. So these are decisions that our parents are making for us and we don't have a say in it. You get absorbed in it really fast. I kind of, we just talked about going to church and 2 hour sermons. But you
Well,
know what? You showed up before that, and then you did your lesson plans. I don't know how long you were in there for, an hour. Then you did the 2 hour sermon.
oh,
And then I think you went and got dinner. And then you went to, at least that's a different building. And then we practiced for all the sports. So you didn't get home till the very end, late end of the night. And then I kind of forgot about the tournaments. You'd have all the tournaments that were way out of town and you'd be gone all weekend driving. And, we were poor, so we couldn't stay in hotels. So uh, people would volunteer their houses when you were in. So we'd stay in, all these people's houses. It was really awkward and weird. You didn't know them,
Sarah,
but they were part of the cult.
let's just talk about the tournaments. So if I remember, if I'm getting this right, it was the basketball tournaments that our guys were all involved in, right? Were you also
Yep, yep.
a cheerleader too? Did you do those tournaments?
I did volleyball, basketball, and cheerleading. I did all three.
Oh, oh, we didn't have that in our church in Denver, Colorado. We only had just basketball. We didn't
Oh,
have, and
really?
then cheerleading competition. And I was a cheerleader, so I was involved in traveling with the guys and doing competition. And so that I didn't know about the volleyball, and well, I didn't know.
Well, and I'm sure it was a way, right, not to make us feel left out of the school activities because
Oh,
from we couldn't go from Friday to sundown to
right,
Saturday, so that was sports. So
right.
that is why they gave us sports. I mean, I kind of figured it out now, but then you didn't.
That's
But
right.
they kept you so busy and so you didn't have
Yeah.
time to think.
Wow, well, that's interesting because my husband, I've been helping the JWs for anybody who doesn't know that about me yet. But my husband is an ex-Jehovah's Witness. So they have the same exact thing. They keep the Jehovah's Witnesses so happy and busy. Not so much now. They're changing things like crazy, kind of like us going to Grace Community and all the changes. They're doing that
Yeah.
right now. Identical what they're doing, what our church went through. But they kept them so busy with meeting after meeting after meeting after thing that they had to do, that they had no time to take care of themselves, to think, to process, to, pray, to study something, I don't know, be with family, I don't know, serve your community.
Yeah, well, and then your
No
parents,
time.
and you were really separated too from your parents a lot. They were doing their own thing and you were
That's
doing
right.
yours, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
So And it was just I was just really thinking about it, and that's where I guess I really realized the strictness in other people's families when you've lived with them, or not lived with, but yeah, stayed with them, or for those tournaments. That's when I remember being like, oh, some houses I realized I had it really lucky compared to maybe others,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
or some were even more lenient. So it went both ways.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I'm sure other people, so I just wanted to make sure people understood that it was pretty up to the parents how strict they wanted to adhere to this. And another big thing is sometimes I feel like you could go and get a diagnosis, but not get treatment, which that's what happened to me a lot. So,
Interesting. Well,
um,
my mom, she took, like, we had 6 kids in my family. And I remember we got whooping cough. People die from that whooping cough. And I remember we had like a hospital room in our house where all the kids were lined up in beds. And then I was constantly getting, what we did is we took diapers and put them in the dryer, and then we put them around their necks and to keep
oh,
them, so that they were comfortable. But but my mother did not take them to the doctor, and
I was just going to ask you.
no, no, it was horrible. It was just constant coughing and raw in their chest. And my mom, she tried really, really hard to do the best she could, without having doctors of any kind. But I was constant nurse Angela, constantly nursing my sisters and brothers so that they wouldn't die. And they ended up getting hearing damage, and I don't know what else. Definitely hearing damage from all of
Yeah.
that.
I
And
think a
all,
lot of kids
yeah.
got that, with that, and like are just getting something not being taken, an ear infection
Yes.
back to
Yeah.
back, all that.
I missed a
It's
month of
just crazy.
1 month of school I missed in first grade, and I was going to the Ambassador College, Imperial Elementary School, and I was swimming a lot, and so I was swimming at the pool. They had a pool there in Pasadena. Swimming a lot. I love to go underwater, and somehow I got ear infection in my ears. My mother, she did the same thing with the diaper thing, and I remember she put olive oil drops in my ear, but I would scream and cry. For a solid month, I did not go to school. I was so sick. I can't even believe that I survived, and I cannot believe that I still have hearing in my ears.
Well, I
It's
think
not
so
perfect.
many of us look back and realize that, and that's what happened to me. That's what happened to me when I started writing stuff out. I started realizing how serious this was and how lucky I was to be alive. That is, you nailed it right there. And I think if anybody else really sat with what they went through and what they experienced, they could say, oh my goodness. Yeah, I probably should have been taken to the doctor for that, and I
Yeah,
wasn't.
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
I had lots of kidney infections, and sometimes I remember the last time I had a kidney infection when I was about 15 and a half, and I was so, so sick. And my mom
Oh,
would,
those are so painful, and that means it was a
oh,
bladder infection that turned into a kidney infection that could have been avoided
yeah,
by
but my mom,
antibiotics.
she had to work. She was working, I don't know, she was gone a lot. So I just had to buck it up and, I don't know, somehow survive. But I was able to manage to drink a lot of water. And I remember I was involved in a talent contest at my school. And I was no longer in the college, the churches of the Worldwide Church of God now. I was in public school, but I really wanted to be involved in this talent contest. So I drank so much water. And wow, I managed to go. I did. I was still sick, but boy, that
Yeah.
fleshed me out
Yeah.
real good. But my mom, she just is like, I don't know, just forgot about me in that time. It was really hard.
I think a lot of I feel like my mom disassociated and she like doesn't like remember, I swear, a lot of it. Like, and so she somehow kind of blocked it somewhere too. I'm sure, because we're out, there has to be some type of guilt and shame that she has too,
Yeah.
because she knows now that she dragged her kids through a cult. And she has kind of gone from church to church to church. I feel like trying to find that same sense of belonging, but you're not going to find that unless you join another cult.
Right,
Well,
right.
well,
You know
You're
what this
not
is?
going to be the chosen one, or
Yeah, that's me and Dad's
so.
experience. We had a pastor that said to me and Dad, he was going to marry Dan and I, and it didn't work out because I didn't realize that I couldn't leave the state with my marriage certificate to get married. But anyway, he was going to get married. He was going to marry us. And I said, Pastor Dwight, I don't know. We can't seem to find the right church, and we've tried and tried. And he goes, well, okay, well, you're in Denver, Colorado. And he said, yeah, you might not find it. And I'm like, what? I'm in Denver, Colorado. It's a very big city, Pastor Dwight. Well, he was in
Yeah.
Naples, Florida, so I think he would know, right? Uh, but you know what? Dan and I, we didn't believe him. We kept searching anyway. And you know something? We never have found it. I know
Yeah.
that. We've been to hundreds of churches. We're not gonna.
Well, for me, I would literally sometimes, it still happens occasionally, but sometimes I'll just get nausea just even driving by one. It's
Yeah,
that
I
severe
know
for
what you
me. I'm
mean.
not even, and it's not their fault. It's not.
No,
And I don't blame them. It's not like that at all. I
no,
don't believe all churches are evil by any
no, me
means,
neither, Sarah.
but I personally can't join one.
I can't either.
Right?
No,
we
no.
Yeah.
stopped looking.
Yeah, we did. We stopped
Yeah.
looking. We'll go sometimes to serve, like sometimes, believe it or not,
Start
God
trouble.
will put it on our hearts to go somewhere at once in a blue moon. And yeah, we're always like, I don't know, we're meant to be there, put it that way. There's always reasons. And we end up
Yeah.
being meeting just the right person for just the right reason and saying just the things that need to be said. And somehow it helps them. And it reminds us that we don't ever want to be in a church that we're not going to fit no matter what. We're not.
No.
Yeah.
So
Well, I kind of looked up, I guess. I tried to find about what the doctrine was, yada yada.
yeah.
Um and let me see if I can find it, because I wrote it down and I couldn't believe it. Okay, and this one I found, if it's okay if I can read it real quick, and then kind of, because it really reminded me how deep and bad this was. It wasn't just that you did not get taken to the doctor. And I had kind of forgotten this part. And I found it, I think it's the Book of Healing on the HWAlibrary.com.
Oh,
So this was literally from Herbert W. Armstrong's booklet on the Book of
Wow.
Healing.
what was the name of that site again? HWA library.
Library.com.
Hmm.
And it's not super long, but I'm just gonna read the bottom. Sickness and disease are abnormal. They are the penalty of violation of natural laws. They are physical sin. I was like, oh, that's right. So if you got sick, not only did you get sick, but it was something that you had done to cause that sickness. So you could be this little kid and you're like, oh God, what did I do? What did I do to cause this? And
Oh,
if you didn't get better, well, you just didn't have enough faith. You
Yes.
just didn't
oh,
have enough
Yes.
faith to heal. And you just got anointed with a cloth from the minister if you were, okay enough to go to, the Sabbath. And if I remember sometimes being left home alone when I shouldn't have been, probably, I think my dad was there, but still, and then I should have been taken to a doctor. And then mom would come home with an anointed cloth and pray over me with that. So I'm sure lots of kids have memories of that. You didn't get taken to a doctor, you got
Right.
prayed over with an anointed cloth by
Right.
your minister or your parent.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember a time that my mother took me over to her friend's house and I was so sick. And I lay down on a side hallway bench the lady had, and I was just in such pain, ear infections, really bad. And so my mom says, Angela, do you want me to have a minister come and anoint you? And I said, yeah. And before he even got there, it just disappeared. And so I remember a comment, being made about, that's how it's supposed to work with faith and all of that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
oh, I'm
Um,
sure. I'm
yeah,
sure.
definitely. I remember that. But
But I had kind of forgotten that. I don't know if you had. Did you remember that it was like our fault too if we
yes,
got sick? I had I just knew I had forgotten that. I remembered we didn't get taken,
It
but I
blows
had
my mind.
forgotten. I mean, how sick is that?
I
That's
know.
horrible.
It is horrible. And I remember it even went so far as my dad having guilt over if he should accidentally have to get gas on the Sabbath day on the way home from work or anything at all. And then if anything went wrong whatsoever, if somebody got sick in the family or anything bad happened at all, my dad would think, God is punishing me because I broke the Sabbath. Yeah,
Yeah, well, and that's right. Like your parents, you didn't get that nurturing and where they like felt bad for you. You really learned you weren't the center of attention. Don't complain. You didn't get taken. It didn't really matter, you know. So you really, you developed a very high pain tolerance. That's the best way to put it.
got that
You
right.
just, I feel like I've always had that, and I didn't really realize where that came from till
Yeah.
almost now. Like I have a very high pain tolerance. Well, I wonder why. We
Sarah,
couldn't take a Tylenol even for you
that's
know,
right. We couldn't.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
it's not allowed. I mean, not it had to, you had to be pretty sick, you know what I
Why
mean?
was that? What was it about the medicine? I mean, didn't they think like man was evolving and that he would make medicine that would help you or
No, he blamed it on man evolving almost in a sense and saying we should be eradicating all this disease and instead we have more disease and all this other stuff and don't trust doctors,
Don't
don't
trust
trust
doctors.
therapists. They were the demons.
is
What,
there scriptures that he used
yeah, what
to
were the
like bash?
Absolutely. And it's all in those on different booklets on that HW, that library one, hwalibrary.com or whatever. And it's just insane. I mean,
well, like,
and what he uses, and this is what I realized. So like in the book of healing, he's not wrong on some stuff. So he talks about, good diet and exercise and things like that. But then he uses that and twists it and says, if you did all this, then you would never get sick. Well, we know that that's not true. Some of the
Right.
healthiest people still fall ill. Like
Oh yeah.
that's just absurd. But that's literally what he said
yeah,
in the
because
book.
we have family DNA, patterning and it's diseases that have gone from family to family, generation after generation, naturally, like heart disease and different things. So that wouldn't be your fault. It wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what they told you and taught you. And I kind of remembered now, not only was I sick, but I was just super like almost like scared or fearful. Like, what did I do to cause this? And I'm racking my brain trying to think, but I was a good kid. So I didn't, but still, like that didn't help you get any sicker, right? Stress is disease too.
Right,
As we all know, stress causes anxiety. Stress, because pretty
right.
much anybody that was in the cult or a cult has anxiety now. I can almost
Yeah, no,
guarantee that one.
yeah, I agree with
You know,
that.
this is like
Uh,
horrible for me to even hear because I can't imagine being 5 years old or 6 years old and you feel a cold coming on. And as a kid, you'd be like, what do I do? What do I do? And you got these parents and elders and stuff, right? Because it wouldn't matter how young you are, right? You'd still be a sinner.
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and the parents would be too if they took you.
Well, not just
And
that,
I
but
think a lot of times you wouldn't you get I'm sorry, you get if you did go, you'd have to get permission most likely from the minister. That happened to me one time.
oh my,
So I kind of wrote out my timeline of stuff, how I remembered, uh, you know, um one other big thing was there was no immunizations as well.
right, right.
And I remember being because we weren't born into it, right? We came later and I kind of remember, like, I don't know, I just felt like I was dirty, like,
Mm.
or I sinned because I was vaccinated and my brothers and sisters were too.
Would
I
people look
remembered
at
that,
you?
like, I
Well, yeah,
really
because
felt that.
you have that damage on your arm, see, and we didn't have that because everybody has a scar. Dan doesn't have one. I don't know what happened there, but I don't think he got inoculated somehow. He had to get some
Yeah, my
mother.
mom has that. I know what you're talking about. Yep, because she's
Uh-huh.
and that is something I also struggled with, and I didn't realize where it came from till I learned later. Oh my God, that was what I just kind of had forgotten. I think until you really sit with what we went through, you do like forget because what happens is we all start just kind of going through the motions in survival mode.
Yeah, no,
and
that's
and
right.
and numbing it. And until I actually sat with all this, I really have
I
forgotten
got a,
so much. I
I got a
remembered
crazy
a
question.
lot. Yeah.
Yes, I got a crazy question. If you were getting sick, say you were 10 and you were
Yeah.
getting sick and your mom noticed, would she ask you, what sin have you committed? Would she be looking at you like, what have you done? Or was it
No,
just you were just guilty and
No, I but it was taught. It was something internal that you did, I think. I don't remember, but that's a really great question,
yeah,
actually.
well,
And that might have happened too. You felt the stress though, didn't you? Like
yeah,
that your parents didn't want to take you.
right,
within the
So,
right.
group? Everybody knew the rules of the group.
Right. So my mother would
yeah.
feel guilty because here I know for sure my mother would feel like I failed as a mother. I did not feed my kids enough healthy food. So if somehow, some way I failed, I didn't do a good job.
Uh,
And so she had the guilt on her if we were to get sick. Absolutely. However, it's interesting. My dad worked in the press building, second largest press in the world in Pasadena, California, that my dad worked on. And he ended up getting really deathly sick because they were not ventilating the room, the building, I should say, properly. And so lead was going in the air, and my dad got lead poisoning.
Oh
So
my goodness.
he was having all kinds of bad allergies. That probably was maybe all part of it, but it was affecting his body. And I remember he would just get home from work and just go in the room and shut the door, and he wanted silence. Imagine it. We had 6 kids, and my dad, he needed desperately that silence because he had such a pounding headache. His body felt so bad. So he was very allergic, but that turned into the the lead poisoning. So it's probably all part of it. So then they finally, he had to get help from the doctor. And then the doctor said, "You got lead poisoning, dude. You got to get out of Pasadena, because in Pasadena it was like a bowl, and all the smog kind of hangs down in the bowl. The land is like, and so they said, you got to get out of the smog. You've got to move to clean air. Colorado would be a good place." So my dad did. He took his whole family, and we moved to Colorado and lived in the mountains for a while until my dad, he did get better, but he ended up working down in Denver where they had smog, but it was like a clear smog because they were starting to make some changes. So my dad eventually did fairly well recover, but never completely. But they screwed my dad's health up permanently. It's my opinion.
That's so sad.
And he had 6 kids to raise. So I had to have a lot of years where my dad did not feel good. He still doesn't really feel that super great. He's got diabetes really bad now, but that's not the church's fault. That was my family DNA history of that. But
But still, you missed out on a lot because
I
of that.
did. My dad
Yeah,
was sick.
absolutely.
He felt so
Absolutely.
sick all the time. It was
Well,
such
and
a
you know
pity.
what? I guarantee you that so many people had watched their brothers and sisters or their mom and dad pass away as well, or commit suicide because they're too scared to get, some help mentally. I have been my whole life as well. This is all really recent. Same with like all these surgeries. Like it kind of all I think everything that happened to me, it just caught up with me. It's the best way to
Yeah.
say it.
Wait,
From my health issues. Um and I kind of timelined it out, kind of how I remembered it to kind of to talk about. But I actually first, if it's okay, I wanted to talk about Kelly. And Kelly was a girl that joined, and she transferred from somewhere else. So then she just kind of joined, but she'd already been in the cult, so knew all the stuff, right? And I just remember, if you remember, you couldn't have school friends,
right.
and
Totally.
so basically whoever was your age that went to that church or cult, that's who you were able to befriend. So it really depended on, the kids your age that went. So when she came, she was my age. So I was thrilled, like, woo, new friend. I was just so excited. We hit it off, best friends. And, I just remember she was just so sweet and so funny. And I was really just thrilled. And I would say, gosh, it was maybe 6 months after her going or so. As I didn't seem like very long. Um, she got cancer. And that girl had so much faith that she was going to be healed
Wow.
and didn't need to get help, and she was in so much pain, and she still just she I just will always remember that she was only maybe 8 or 9. And I'll just never forget, she totally believed that by having that faith that we talked about, that she would be completely healed from this. And her parents believed that as well, and did not take her to get proper care. And she started coming, and then she just looked sicker and sicker, and seemed to be less and less. And then eventually she didn't come. And then I'll never forget, the minister said he had gone and visited her at her house, and she still had all that faith, and he'd visited her on I don't know, a Thursday or a Friday, and she had said, it must have been a Thursday. She said, I'm anyways, I can't remember, but she said, I'm not going to die today. I'm going to die tomorrow on the Sabbath. So I think it was
Oh,
a
geez.
Friday. And I remember, it was just, now thinking about it, it's just so gross, right?
She
But at
wanted
the
to die on
time, it was
Saturday.
like a way to make it be okay, that she had so much faith. So guess what? We know where she's going. She's okay. Like, because we believed, what if you did die before Jesus Christ came back, that you would be like just sleeping, so it was like she was okay, she was still saved, even though she might still be alive to this day and actually have been saved.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
really sick.
So
There's so many ladies. I mean, I've read so many stories on, especially like on the one website, the Painful Truth. That website is, I think that's the one where it's got a lot of stories about people who had medical neglect and did not take care of themselves and believed that they would be healed, and that, but even if they began to feel if they wanted to go to the doctor, they would get a visit from a pastor who would come and talk them out of it, and guilt and shame them to death for even
absolutely.
thinking of doing that. And then they would die
Absolutely.
again
Yep.
and again. There's countless stories.
So I have a strange question.
What is it?
Did they die as martyrs? Were they praised for their faith
Yes.
while they
Yes.
died?
Yes.
Yes, just like Kelly was. That's why I wanted to start with that one, because I thought it was so important that they were definitely praised for not going to doctor and getting help and dying.
Sarah, here's the thing, is that your friend was so young. I mean, usually when kids are that young, they don't have a lot of ego or pride or anything. But what I sensed when you were saying that about how it ended there, I feel like the parents were coaching her and telling her that, to buck it up and be prideful, that you're going to die on the Sabbath day. I've sensed it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It had to. You're so right. And that's just
It wasn't
sickening
her
that they
thinking.
sat there and watched their child in so much pain and suffering, and they could
It's pride
have,
and ego, isn't it, Dan?
you
Or
know,
Yeah,
martyrdom, or
yeah, the
they could
witnesses.
have at least eased her pain. Even if she still didn't live, they could have at least eased and given her some comfort,
right.
But I guarantee you that she didn't. She might have been saying that exactly, but there's no way she felt comforted and nurtured by
No,
your
Yeah.
parents just letting you die and not get
no.
help.
And knowing that I'm going
She
to
was
die
old enough
tomorrow.
to know that,
Right.
you know.
Don't you suppose that if she thought the thought that I'm going to die, oh, don't worry, I'm not going to die today, I'm going to die tomorrow, that she would have thought, Mom, Dad, if I'm going to die, can you take me to the doctor and try to save me?
That's what I'm saying. Like, thinking about it now, is like she knew it was that bad and knew when
She
she was
did.
gonna die. She could literally feel the life leaving
Poor
her
thing.
body. Because how else could you make a statement like
Right.
that?
How old was she? 10 when she finally died?
Like I said, she was only, it happened like almost right away after I met her. She joined. I
Oh,
just really, really liked her. I wasn't like, I didn't get to know her as well as I wanted to. So it was a very short period. It was just like new friend, you know, 6 months of being really good friends. And then she got sick. So it was quite fast. But it's also something that you don't ever forget. It's never, ever, ever, ever left me.
yeah. I remember in Pasadena, they had something that where my mother was able to go to get some natural help from. And there was a commissary, which was like a place where you got food. And then there was some sort of a natural someplace that she would go to get help, like direction natural things to try. I don't know, something like, I don't remember now, but there was something in Pasadena
Oh,
that,
yeah, I think that they did. I think a lot of moms tried that too, like the praying with the anointed oil or the holistic
yeah, it
alternative
was some
medicine
holistic.
approach.
Yeah,
Yep,
some
yep, absolutely.
place
My mom
where,
was all into that too.
yeah, the
Um,
natural place you could go and they would give you advice on what to do, you know.
Well, you know,
uh,
I was gonna tell you in the Watchtower, they had a similar thing when the people died because they couldn't take blood. They had all these children, and the whole page of the Watchtower was all these children. And they said, you know, Jehovah's so happy that they martyred themselves rather than breaking Jehovah's law and taking blood, and they were children. And you
exactly.
parents, I mean, where is your heartfelt love? Where is your heart for your damn children that you brought into this world? You could actually sit there, see it's programming, and watch your child die. I tell you, I got to say this. I'm surprised two things. One is that you and Angela are even alive,
I agree with
and
that.
two, that you're even sane.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
all the
yeah.
toxic guilt and shame, thinking about, oh my God, I'm sick, knowing they're going to judge me, knowing you're going to judge yourself, and knowing you can't really help a cold coming on or flu or, you know, tonsillitis or, and to
When you're getting sent to school still too. So, it's pretty rampant in school. You catch sickness almost
Right,
right when you start. Almost
right.
everybody does,
Well, how about
it's
the
like,
fact that everybody knows that you go to the store, you go to the bathroom and you put your hand on this, you put your hand on that, that this person just before you was
Yeah.
sneezing their little head off, or they had a sty in their eye, and and then you go home, the next thing you know, you got it, right?
yeah,
Now,
yeah,
that's gonna be my fault? No, that's natural. But
exactly.
my mom, I know she would feel bad, like I'm not doing my job. I got to get these kids more vitamin C. I remember her feeding us cod liver oil by the spoonfuls, castor oil,
Oh gosh, why does
and
that almost sounds
oh
familiar?
God Almighty, man, that stuff was gross. It was thick and disgusting, and I
We
couldn't
took
put
this
the stuff on
weird
my.
stuff. God, what was it called? KM or something
Yeah,
weird like you're talking about that we had to take too. Now that you're
yeah,
just, and I don't even know what it was, but something to hopefully build up maybe your immunity,
right,
blah, blah,
probably
blah, because
right,
you weren't taken. And, the big reason you weren't is because of the abuse and the neglects. They didn't want you to going to the doctor and saying, well, how long has this been going on? That's one of the first
right,
questions, right? And
right.
what are they going to say? That they're going to get in trouble. And then, so that's a big reason why you're,
I
you, you
can
Yeah,
know,
advise.
and it can be lead
they
poisoning.
don't, they talk, the ministers talk to the parents out of it
Right. It could be
going.
lead poisoning in your house, or mold or something.
Yes.
I mean, my dad had lead poisoning from the college, and to think that they do not care to have proper ventilation in that building makes me really mad,
Yeah.
because that was very much
Your
big
dad's got a
time
permanent
neglect.
cough because of
Yeah,
it.
he has well, that was from the
The
dyes.
dyes, okay.
Yeah, so
That
when
was
my dad was
factory though
out,
too,
that was a
right?
whole nother issue. My dad he has a lot of coughing. When he gets in the cold weather, he coughs a whole lot because of the dyes that were on the presses. And those dyes
Mm.
make you get a cough. Dan uses dyes in what we do for a living. And you have to be really careful not to breathe that stuff, but they didn't give a care about it.
So I got a
Yeah.
question. What do you do for like strep throat or something really bad like tonsillitis?
Oh, I
Strep
have
throat?
that. I have that.
I'm
Do you want
curious.
me to start?
It's a
Yeah, you
quick
want me to
fix
start
with
down my
penicillin. It's a quick
you want me
fix
to
with
start down
penicillin.
my list,
Yes.
what happened and how this
Oh
is
yeah.
still
Yeah.
affecting me to this day. So, I really, like I said, I really sat with myself and we joined at 5. I remembered, so what first started me is I started having nightmares. I bet you a lot of others have and did as well. I had 2 recurring ones: burning alive with fire, gonna burn in the lake of fire. And then I always had one where I was being chased, but I couldn't run. And those, there was really scary. And I remember I would, go down to my mom's room, but there was no comfort there. I could lie next to her bed, no blanket, no pillow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it started for me. I started having nightmares. And then probably about like 7, I started suffering from really, really bad splitting migraines.
Oh,
Um, all the time. Missed a lot of school.
Oh man.
And looking back, I know it was just all because of the stress, because I thought I was going to die. And, you know, you didn't know when. I mean, I grew up not thinking I was ever going to even finish high school or go to
Yeah.
college, let alone get
Or
married, have
die, or
kids,
yeah,
that
right.
you were going to die anytime. You
Right.
didn't dream. So that really supports like depression,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, almost suicidal ideation, you
Right.
know, because why live, you know?
Right.
So it was just horrible what it, like you said, the mental trauma and like how what it did to you internally. I'm
Right.
really realizing it now. So that's how it really started for me. And then I started having stomach issues. And I don't I never got seen. I don't ever remember, and I always have had them. And all of a sudden in 2020, those stomach issues they got so bad. I ended up in the ER. And of course, this is 2020, right? COVID. I can't have anybody with me back there. So, you know, like, I'm like, this is it. I'm gonna die because I here's the virus they talked about, the, you know, because it was like either like a virus, global famine, you know, like that was gonna, or World War III, you know, that was what was gonna take us out. It was always that fear. So that definitely like I feel like triggered me more than I realized in 2020, thinking back. And I had to call my therapist definitely when I was in there alone. I was very scared to be alone in there. And finally, I got diagnosed with diverticulitis.
Yeah, that too.
And I ended up like I got really, really sick. I had to have a surgery. I ended up having to go back again. I had got an abscess. Like 6 months later, I was admitted, and then I never got better. And I was on antibiotics and pain meds from December till June till I got my surgery, a
Oh,
long time.
jeez.
And they cut out a bunch of my colon, all that, but then I'm still having issues. And I went and I still have it. Even after my surgery, I still have diverticulitis.
Oh my God.
So I still suffer from a lot of stomach issues. Feel like that's where a lot of my anxiety and stress goes, because that's one question, you know, my therapist asked me, like, where do you feel like that's at?
Yeah.
It's always for me really in my stomach, and it's in my heart. So I deal with really bad heart palpitations
I do
um
too. I do too.
all day every day, 24/7. It makes,
Fluttering.
yes,
And
yes.
skipping, bumping.
Like say you got in a car accident and your adrenaline's running, that's how I live all
Oh,
the time.
Jesus.
Yeah, and we're working on it. I do something called mind heart coherence, which is kind of
Oh,
helping.
yeah,
And
the Craig Braden thing.
yes,
Yeah.
and so to try to get that down, and so that's a technique that you can look up to try to help when you have that, really, because some stuff just doesn't help me. The breathing doesn't help, but that does seem to help a little more. I call it breathing into my heart. You know, it's kind of what you're doing. Um, so that is one that's kind of followed me into my future, something I feel like I suffered with as a kid, never got taken. And I just continued as well to put it off and not take my health seriously till it kind of put me on my
So,
bottom.
yeah, I want to talk about that in a minute because, here's the thing. Since we were kind of told to not be sick, and so you're not, if you do get sick, everybody wants to ignore it. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're not going to get a lot of attention for being sick anyway, because you shouldn't be sick because it's a shameful thing. And so therefore we are now in our adult years trying to not pay attention to our body and what's going on in it. We tend to do what we've always done: ignore, ignore, ignore. It'll go away, because you shouldn't
Yes,
have it anyway. And if you do, it's because you've sinned, or you've done something wrong, and you shouldn't be sick. And so you just ignore yourself. So we're out of touch with our bodies. As
absolutely. I'm
people.
so disconnected with
Right,
my
right.
emotions.
Me too.
Yes.
It's
And
bad.
like my worth,
Yeah. Wow.
feeling worthy
Oh
of
yeah.
love, of happiness, joy, all those things
Robbed.
we weren't taught to do, and it was robbed from us. If you did, then it was prideful.
Right.
If you were,
That's it.
yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
That's
So
true.
Yeah.
you really weren't supposed to almost be happy. It felt like,
No, self-esteem
Yeah.
is a forbidden thought.
yeah.
I got a
Pride.
question. So how long were you out before COVID came?
Oh, so I left maybe when I was 15, and let's see, it's 2024, and that was 2020. So I was, the beginning of my 40s there
So see,
when
that shows the importance of what you guys are talking about right now.
yeah.
Because that reactivated that the subconscious mind and all that guilt you had when
Oh,
that
yeah.
came out. It re-triggered
That's
it.
where it all
You feel like,
started,
oh,
and
this
I
is
got
wrong. This is my
re-triggered.
relationship. I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
And she thought she was going to die because
Yeah.
of Herbert W. Armstrong's training.
Right.
Teaching.
Oh, it was so bad. It was so intense. I luckily, this is actually a really good one, which I was gonna wait, but you know what? It came up. I have this app. It's called Insighttimer. It's wonderful. It's free as well. It's called Insighttimer, and it has meditations. The tapping that we were talking about, I think you've done yep. You can look that up. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll search. I have something specific. So what I did is I searched surgery, and there were people telling me, you got a great doctor. Your surgery is going to go great. It's going to be so successful. And I had to listen to those just
Oh,
over and over
I
to
love
just
that.
calm myself
Oh, yeah.
before and let myself know I was safe. It was okay. This was needed, because it was horrible. And then I was a caregiver, and I got injured 9/24/2021. I caught a lady in the shower, and she slipped and fell.
Ugh.
So I had that going on, as well, had the stomach first, and then that happened.
Oh, yeah.
And then I couldn't work. So that caused an enormous amount of
Oh.
stress. I didn't know how I was going to provide for me and my daughter. And I was still smoking cigarettes at the time, so they put me on varenicline to get off, and I ended up going into anaphylactic shock, and I had seizures for 2 days.